Hello and welcome. In this video lecture, we are going to discuss about macros in C. In last lecture, we had a discussion over pre-processes in C, how pre-processive directive is used, which is a hash symbol. Now, in this lecture, we'll be more concentrating towards that using this preprocessor, how we can utilize the macros. Now, macro in C programming is a segment of code. We can define it as a segment of code which is replaced by the value of macro. Segment of code replaced by value of macro. Okay, now macro is defined by again using the preprocessive directive, and the description we have already seen in our last video. Okay, this hash defined directive, this directive is used every time when you want to have the macros in your program. Now, there are two types of macros. The first one is object-like macros. Object-like macros, and the other type is function like macros. We will be dealing with both the types one by one to understand that what is the difference. So the object like macros, they are like an identifier, okay, that is replaced by the value. Okay, so here we are talking about identifier replaced by value. Okay, that's what we are talking here for object like. Now, these type of macros are generally or widely used to represent some numeric constants. So numeric constants are generally defined. For example, let's take example. For example, if I write define and let's define the value of speed of light, if I am not wrong, 792,458. Okay, now this is my speed of light. This is a constant value. Okay, this is comment. So what is the actual meaning here of object like macros? That whenever we use this C in our program somewhere in our source code, at that time it is replaced by the value which is defined here in the form of macro. Okay, that means every time whenever we use in our program C, the value will be replaced by what? The constant value, which is 299792458, which is the actual constant value of speed of light, right? Let's see this with a programming example to understand better. Now, let us see in this example written over here. As you can see, once we have included the standard input-output header file, then in the second line we have written hash define pi. Now here the pi is the macro name. This pi is the macro name, and which will be replaced by this value which is written over here. We have defined a macro name and its corresponding value. Now what is happening in the program? We have taken the radius and we try to calculate the area. Now you remember that while calculating the area of circle, we use a constant value of pi. So this pi as a pi we have defined over here, right? This is the example of object-like macros. So the constant value is defined here. Now we have taken the value of radius, and here you can see that in the formula of area, rather than writing the value, a constant value, we have here written the name of the macro, which is pi, and we have whatever the value of radius we have entered, we have got from the user, that will be used, and we have printed the value. So in the example I have already executed it, passed the radius value as 5, and we have here the required value of area. Now the point is, whenever you use a object like macro, whenever the compiler encounters any of the macro symbol like pi in the source code, it eventually look for in the pre-processing part, it eventually look for what is the corresponding value, and everywhere the value is replaced by the macro. This 3.1415, the value of pi is replaced here at the runtime, and then you get the output, right? So this is the example of object like macros. Now let us see function like macros, how they work. Function like macros looks like a function call in the program. Okay, so you define the function like macros in the same way as you define a normal C function. For example, let's say we have, let's say take the same example. We have a function and we want to define the function which is for calculating the circle area, which we have earlier done in the example. Okay, and this function takes an argument of radius r. Okay, now it's something else happened. Let me erase it. Fine. So this is the definition part, in which I have just written that how this function like macro will be. So we have hash defined circle area, which takes a parameter or argument as r. Now the actual function code is what we are expecting. This is the value of pi, which is required to be used, 3.1415, into what we expect here. We expect here the radius, which is 2 times. Let's make a star. Okay, and this is the actual code of function, right? So the idea is, every time when the program encounters like this, when the program encounters circle area, and definitely we have certain value of argument here. This argument is nothing but the radius. Then it will be replaced by 3.1415, and then here we have argument, and then we have value of argument. Okay, so it will be replaced like this. So for example, if I take the value of radius as 5, as we have done, so if I do so, then the function will be like circle area, and we have taken here pass, so it will be, it expands to, what will be the expansion of, because macros are expanded when we put the actual values 1 5, and then we have the value of argument is 5 and value of argument is 5. Okay, this is how the expansion is done, because here we have defined the macro in form of function. That is why it is known as function like macros. Let us see the example in the same previous one by doing so. Let's try it. Okay, so this is the exact previous code which we have used in object like macros to calculate the area of circle. Now we are going to modify it for function like macros. Now the purpose is that whenever we write a function in form of macros with the pre-processing part, and whenever this particular function encounters somewhere in our source code, the macro expansion should take place. So up till now we have this value of pi. Now we will be defining here the function which we want to declare. Let's say it was circle, CIRCL is circle area. Okay, and now this takes the argument which is our radius as discussed, and we need to tell that what will be the expansion or expected value. So it will be the value. Now remember, we can put here the direct value as we have written an example, or we can use our already defined object like macro, because in this example it is already defined. So we will be using the already defined macro over here, which is pi, that is the value of pi, and we need radius multiplied 2 times, right? This is the definition of my function like macro. Now in our main program, what modifications do we need to have here? We will be having use of macro pi, and rather than macro pi, we will be having use here macro like function or function like macro. Better is a function like macro. Okay, so what we'll be doing here, rather than writing the formula over here, we'll simply call our function which we have earlier defined. This is a circle and this is area, and we have a argument r, right? This is exactly what we were doing earlier. Okay, we have just done a little modification, that we have utilized the object macro definition which has already been here in our function like macro definition part, and here for calculating the area we have simply called it. So when we pass it, when we execute it, it should return us exactly the same value which we have done while passing in the previous program. I have taken the same value for verification. Okay, so this is the method of using function like macros. Now in this experimentation, I would like you to implement the same example set for better understanding of object like macros and function like macros. Thank you for watching.